Hello, everyone. So when I did my update for my channel back maybe a month or two ago, um, I had said that I was considering making some videos on my experience with mental illness, and I'm having trouble sleeping, so I figured why not? Let's just do that now, since it's a big part of my life right now. I'm in a very bad depressive episode right now. So, um, I've been diagnosed with a lot of things, but I think the three things that really stick for me are borderline personality disorder, major depressive disorder, and autism spectrum disorder. So I also have anxiety disorders, but we're not going to focus on that for today. Um, so I'm going to go through the symptoms of each of the disorders and then um, talk about which ones I relate to the most. Um, and we'll kind of just go from there. Talk about treatments I've tried and what's worked and what hasn't worked. So, for borderline personality disorder, you have an intense fear of abandonment, um, going to extreme measures to avoid real or imagined separation or rejection. So, that's just the fear of being left alone or someone leaving you. So, this could involve, like a romantic partner. You go to lengths to make sure they don't leave by making sure they're always happy. Um, this could occur with family members too and friends, even. I've had all of those experiences. A pattern of unstable, intense relationships, such as idealizing someone one moment and then suddenly believing the person doesn't care enough or is cruel. I have had this experience as well with both family members and a girl that I was in love with, but she didn't feel the same way. But in my mind, she was my girlfriend, in my idealistic mind. So we fought a lot, and then at other times we were like besties. So it just goes up and down and up and down and up and down. It's it's kind of like the way the mood swings almost. Um, she does one little thing that I think is out of place, and I'm fighting with her. I start a fight. Um, and then family members, of course, if they if they say one thing that is offensive or that I perceive to be offensive, suddenly they're the worst. Let's just say grandmother ever. Um, and then later on, I realize I'm wrong, and I go back to idealizing the family members. So just a little um, spiel there. Said I was going to read the symptoms first, but I guess I'm going to just go ahead and give my experience with them. So you have rapid changes in self-identity and self-image that include shifting goals and values and seeing yourself as bad or as if you don't exist at all. So here's the thing about this symptom for me. I do have shifting self-image and self-identity. Um, I had long-term goals that have now been slashed by dropping out of graduate school 3 times, and I do not know what I'm going to do next. I don't think I can go back to graduate school. I'm in no condition for that. Um, so I'm at a point in my life where I'm at a crossroads, and this just keeps changing what my goals are. I don't know what my goals and values are. And then seeing yourself as if you're bad or as if you don't exist at all. I see the thing here is I don't want to exist anymore. Um, Not that I'm going to commit suicide. I'm not going to do that. I am too afraid of death to do that, and my psychiatrist is aware that I am having these thoughts. Um, but yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I wouldn't exist at all. I mean, the pain of these disorders, the pain of being always let down, the pain of never being able to achieve anything anymore. I mean, I graduated third in my class in high school, and ever since then, it's just been downhill. So, that's just how it's been. Periods of stress-related paranoia, loss of contact with reality, lasting from a few minutes to a few hours. So this is more like psychosis, where you do lose contact with reality. I have never experienced psychosis, so I don't identify with that part of this symptom, but the paranoia I do identify with. I'm like petrified that people are talking about me and berating me behind my back. So very often I'll get involved in conversations and just you know inquire. Are you talking about me? And you know sometimes I'll overhear something that I think they're talking about me, but they're really not, and I just come out of the room and start a fight anyway because I thought I overheard something. So that is not good. So impulsive and risky behavior. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the ones I identify with are spending sprees, binge eating, and then a history of drug abuse, just alcohol and marijuana. But it was very binging like binge drinking 8 to 10 rum and cokes and 4 beers in like less than 2 hours. I'm on the road to recovery from alcoholism. Um, and then sabotaging success by suddenly quitting a job or ending a positive relationship. I kind of have that too. Although a lot of the quitting and, you know, quitting good jobs, that has to do with anxiety about being um, in the job. I have a lot of social anxiety. So a lot of times I quit a job because of that social anxiety. And ending a positive relationship, um, that's because I don't think I deserve the relationship. So, that would be there. Suicidal threats, or let's just call it suicidal ideation. I have that to the extreme right now. In fact, this is the worst it's ever been in my entire life. I'm 28 right now. Um, I've never had suicidal ideation until maybe age 26 or 27. I've had this disorder for almost a decade. Um, Actually, more than a decade. I think it goes back to high school for me. Um, but lately, the suicidal threats. I mean, I've also self-injured. I've cut my wrist. Um, and That's not suicidal behavior, though. The suicidal behavior is the thoughts I have in my head and the pictures I have in my head lately of me jumping off rooftops or stabbing myself to death or slitting my throat or things of that nature. These thoughts are running through my head, and it makes me very uncomfortable because there's a part of me that wants to do it and just end it all, but I feel like that would be a very selfish thing to do because I have family and a couple of friends that care about me. And also, again, I am very afraid of death and pain. So as long as those two things remain true, I'm going to be on this earth. Um, yeah, I can't stand being in pain, physical pain. But the thoughts are there, and they're very painful to have. I kind of wish my brain would kind of redirect itself to other thoughts that are less vulgar and self injurious. But we'll see about that when as my treatment improves. So then, wide mood swings lasting from a few hours to a few days, which can include intense happiness, irritability, shame, or anxiety. So for me, I have mood swings. Right now, I'm kind of just stable in a depressive state, but I will have mood swings several times in a day. It can go from anxiety to depression to anger. Those are the main three that shift around. I usually don't get to happiness, maybe in neutral state, but not really happy. Um, and these can be really damaging. You're around somebody and you're just shifting from hour to hour between these mood states. And they have no idea what to expect and no idea what's going on with you. And it leads them to walk on eggshells around you because they just don't know what's going to happen next. And my family members do that around me because they can't predict what's going to happen. Here's a big one: ongoing feelings of emptiness. So, um, this is one of the most prominent symptoms of borderline that I have. Feelings of emptiness on the inside. I was debating reading that poem that I read called Broken Soul Syndrome. But I don't want to make this video too long. But basically, what that poem states is that you start out with loneliness in the beginning, and there's always a chance that loneliness can go away. But as loneliness persists and festers, it turns into emptiness, and then it's hard to get that emptiness to go away. So for me, I've been lonely for a long time. A lot of that is because I just strongly desire a romantic relationship, and I've never been in one really. Everybody I have feelings for doesn't like me back, and it's a big thing. So, I'm missing that part of me, that other half, and that leads to intense loneliness, and that kind of just turns into emptiness on the inside. Um, so, not saying a romantic relationship would cure that symptom because I don't think that's the only thing that causes the emptiness. I think there's a lot of unfulfilled goals and, not a lot of things that are bringing me those feelings of, I'm going somewhere, losing all my jobs and dropping out of school. So, I mean, that's just adding to the emptiness that I'm feeling. Okay, so now I'm glad we saved this symptom for the last because this is the biggest symptom for me with borderline. So that would be inappropriate, intense anger, such as frequently losing your temper, being sarcastic or bitter, or having physical fights. So I am, if someone offends me or says something that I take the wrong way or don't understand, I am very offended by it and I lose control. Not lately. I think I found my place where I can control my anger, but in the past, it's been very violent. It's been very primal. It's usually related to rejection or when I think someone is gonna abandon me. Sometimes it's simple things too, like criticism. Um, but I have had physical fights with my dad where I slapped him and punched him in the face. Um, I got into 3 physical fights with my stepfather. He's twice my size, though, so when I tried to beat the shit out of him, he turned around and beat the living shit out of me and almost left me blind in my, I think, right eye. So I was lucky to get away from that unscathed. And besides that, I've had many, many, many outbursts like that, where there's violence, not necessarily that I'm having physical fights, but I'm throwing things around the house, and it just becomes very, very problematic. Okay, so that's my experience with borderline. Um, just to quickly draw autism spectrum into this, I'm not gonna go into this in uh, deep detail, but what my therapist said with regards to the anger is that what happens is because autism is a disorder of misinterpreted social cues. So basically, what happens is that the autism misinterprets the social cue as negative, and then the borderline personality disorder responds to that misinterpreted social cue with anger and rage. And I had never thought about that relationship before, but my therapist kind of just cleaned it up and made it very simple, and I think it makes a ton of sense. Okay, so we've talked about BPD in grave detail. Now let's talk about depression. A lot of these symptoms are going to seem the same, by the way. There's a lot of overlap between depression and borderline. There's some difference. Hold on. Sorry, I was taking a drink. So, with borderline, the symptoms are kind of constant. But with depression, with major depressive disorder, you go through depressive episodes that remit, at least for a period of time before they come back. Or you could have persistent depressive disorder, which obviously would not remit. And then you could have treatment resistant depression, which probably wouldn't remit as much either. Um, so I've been diagnosed with both of these disorders because there are symptoms that are different. So the first one listed here is feeling sad, anxious, or empty. That just goes without saying. You're gonna feel a deep. Let's just go to the next one because it's about what I'm about to say. So emptiness we've talked about. I do feel deeply empty on the inside for a number of reasons, and then feeling hopeless, worthless, and pessimistic. So the biggest word here for me is hopeless. So right now I feel kind of hopeless about my life, hopeless about my future, and hopeless about my existence, hopeless about my perspectiveness to find love, a job that I enjoy, and a family that I can raise. I just feel hopeless that that's ever going to happen. I do feel worthless because of some of the behaviors that I've done and the people I've hurt over the last decade or so, including family members with those anger outbursts, and I am pessimistic because that's what I'm used to. I'm used to nothing working out for me. So, yes, I'm very pessimistic. Um, Crying a lot. So I cry a little bit. It takes a lot for me to cry. Um, One example of when I did cry a lot was when my mother was in the hospital because she got the necrotizing fasciitis, which is the flesh eating bacteria. And I went to the room and I saw what she looked like and I just lost it. Um, I've never cried like that before in my entire life. Um, so, absolutely terrible to see her in that condition. And 8 months later, she passed away of that disease. That was in 2021. So that whole experience was very traumatizing for me. I wouldn't be surprised if I had a little PTSD from that experience, but it wouldn't be major. But so that's like an example of when I cried. I didn't cry at her memorial, even though I gave the eulogy. But no, I didn't cry. Um, I think I'm just so used to these negative things happening that it takes a lot for me to cry. Um, So that's that. Feeling bothered, annoyed, or empty or angry. We've already discussed that with the borderline, so we don't need to discuss that with depression. Here's a big one. This is different than borderline, although it can happen in borderline, but it's still different. But this is really specific to major depressive disorder. And I do have this a lot, this symptom. It's called anhedonia. Loss of interest in hobbies and interests you once enjoyed. So right now I am in a state of, I would say, moderate anhedonia. Earlier this week, it was severe. I was just sleeping all day, not doing anything, not getting out of bed. The other night, I slept 14 hours, and 2 nights ago, I slept 18 hours. So, um, that's just basically you don't do anything that you used to be interested in. You just basically stay in bed and sleep, or you just, I don't know, sit around and not do anything. Um, so I have that to the extreme. Decreased energy or fatigue. I'm always tired. Always tired. I always want to take a nap. Even though I'm having trouble sleeping right now, probably because I slept 18 hours the night before. Difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions. So I have difficulty making decisions um, sometimes, but that's about it. Moving or talking more slowly. Not really. Difficulty sleeping, early morning awakening, or oversleeping. So I have all three of those. Right now it's 7 a.m. where I am. I've been awake since 3 a.m. So there's your early morning awakening. It could be related to caffeine too. I drink a lot of caffeinated beverages. Then there's the oversleeping that I told you about. And then there's difficulty sleeping, which I also experience. So that's different than borderline as well. Appetite or weight changes. So again, that's also different than borderline. So depression has more physical consequences than borderline, at least that are listed in the DSM. Um, and I do experience these physical uh, differences. Chronic physical pain with no clear cause that does not get better with treatment. So I think that most of my physical problems actually do have a clear cause. I do have IBS. I have headaches. My GI tract is a mess right now. Um, but I do think they have a cause, so I don't think depression is responsible for that. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Thoughts of death, suicide, self harm, or suicide attempts, and we have already talked about that. Now they go into more detail here. I'm just going to do males because I'm a male. But if you want to read the female, it's down here. This is healthline.com. So just Google Healthline major depressive disorder, and you'll see the females may experience symptoms related to there, and that's below males. So for males, moods such as anger, aggressiveness, irritability, anxiousness, or restlessness. So all things we have discussed. The aggressiveness and irritability can is that so there's a couple things that can be confused here with the irritability and aggressiveness. It can be a sign of just regular major depressive disorder, or if you are taking an antidepressant and you start to get aggressive, irritable, and angry, and you start to get more symptoms of mania, then it could mean you're bipolar. So that is something to look out for too. I mean, that was confused by some of my psychiatrists too, but most of them just slapped the major depressive disorder because I didn't show any symptoms of mania except the irritability and aggressiveness. So they couldn't diagnose bipolar with just one symptom. We'll talk more about that in a little while. So then emotional well-being, such as feeling sad, empty, or hopeless, behavior such as loss of interest, no longer finding pleasure in favorite activities, feeling tired easily, thoughts of suicide, drinking excessively, using drugs, blah blah blah. Sexual interest such as reduced sexual desire or lack of sexual performance. Cognitive abilities such as inability to concentrate, difficulty completing tasks. Okay, you know what? Most of this is the same as above, so I'm going to stop. Um, so the big question is, so again, the three diagnoses I'm talking about today are borderline personality disorder, major depressive disorder, and autism spectrum, all three which I have been officially diagnosed with. Hold on. So, what is the major takeaway from these disorders? Well, the major takeaway from borderline, this is what my therapist told me. So, personality disorders are not really treatable with medication. You can prescribe certain meds to treat specific symptoms. Like for example, you can prescribe mood stabilizers to deal with anger and aggressiveness, or antipsychotics, but those alone are not going to make you feel better. So my therapist, and I believe him when he said this, said that I'm basically going to be battling this my entire life to some degree, even if it's not always apparent, because BPD is one of the easiest disorders to treat. I don't I don't believe that, because I have a very severe version of it, um, and it's been over a decade and nothing has worked. But given that there's an 83% remission rate, it is possible that eventually this disorder will go away. So we'll see about that. So anyway, let's talk about what's worked and what hasn't worked for me. Um, let's start with the medication. So first, I was tried on SSRIs, which are antidepressants, SNRIs, tricyclics, and even one MAOI, the monoamine oxidase inhibitor. And every single one of those meds made me angry, aggressive, and irritable. So we had to let go of most of them. I may try Prozac again because Prozac didn't really make me quite that angry, but in reality, it's probably not worth trying any of those serotonergic antidepressants again after what's happened. So then we go to atypical antidepressants like Wellbutrin, which I'm currently on. I'm on 300 milligrams of Wellbutrin, and I metabolize Wellbutrin very quick. So we'll probably go up to 450, or we might switch it to Auvelity. I'm not really sure what we're going to do yet. But it's not really doing anything for my depression just yet. Um, so, but it's a good antidepressant. It doesn't affect serotonin, so it's safe for me to be on. However, the dopamine reuptake, I think, just sometimes can make the anger come out, but we'll monitor that. Um, Other than that, I'm on lithium, which is a mood stabilizer, and Depakote, which is a mood stabilizer, and both of those are staples of my regimen. I've been on both for a long time. I believe they stabilize my mood and control my anger and aggression, at least to the point where I can leave the situation. And so I'm very happy that those two drugs are in my um, regimen. So I would actually highly recommend lithium and Depakote for someone who's struggling with anger um, and aggression. Or just, even just try lithium. Lithium's a very good mood stabilizer, and it's good for anger. Antipsychotics, I've pretty much been on all of them. And the problem with antipsychotics is the side effects. So, antidepressants and mood stabilizers have their own side effects, but antipsychotics come with a lot more side effects than these other medications do. So, for example, there's this uh, movement disorder known as akathisia, where you feel restless and you can't sit still, you can't lie still. Um, your body has to move. You just feel an inner feeling of restlessness. It almost feels like an anxiety attack. And I've had it twice, with once with Risperdal and once with Latuda. So that's one example. And then you have Zyprexa, which is a really good medication, but it comes with a lot of weight gain. So I couldn't be on Zyprexa. And then Seroquel is incredibly sedating, even though I really like Seroquel. Um, so, those are just some examples. Rexulti caused a ton of insomnia and activated my anger. And finally, I'm on Caplyta now, and it's just simply not doing anything for my depression. So, with antipsychotics, I feel like they're a good class of drug, but if you can't tolerate the side effects, then you're probably not going to be able to um, use these drugs. You might have to stick with the antidepressants and the mood stabilizers. So that's my experience with medications. I'm not going to give up on meds yet, but I may consider electroconvulsive therapy if the meds don't work out. ECT is supposed to be very good for depression, um, although I may get denied because of the personality disorder. I'm not sure yet. Okay, so psychotherapy is the next part of this. I've had a lot of trouble with psychotherapy, mainly because, and this is probably one reason I haven't gotten better, I'm very bad at doing homework and applying the skills in real time. Um, so for borderline personality disorder, they use dialectical behavior therapy (DBT), and there's 5 modules or 4 modules, I don't remember. So let's see. There's interpersonal relationships. There's emotion regulation. There's mindfulness, and there's stress tolerance. So there's 4. I haven't really used interpersonal relationships that much. I've practiced Dear Man maybe once or twice. um, and then emotion regulation, like opposite action, and damn, I can't think of any more skills. But I have uh, used opposite action. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Um, Distress tolerance. I've just never found this module that helpful at all. Um, a lot of these skills they teach you, these crisis survival skills, just never really percolated with me at all. Mindfulness is not something that I dislike. It's just something that I have a lot of trouble doing. But I feel like if I could be mindful and live in the moment, that would be better for me. So if I had to pick my favorite module in this whole thing, it's probably emotion regulation, because you have the major mood shifts. Um, so that is the most important thing I think with BPD is the mood shifts. And I do think the mindfulness meditation uh, module is also really good. To practice trying to live in the moment and not letting anything disturb your peace. So I'm not against that either. The only thing that really makes me mad is that DBT really doesn't address depression um, that much. Opposite action addresses it a little bit, but other than that, it's really not in the manual that much. Um, so what do we do then? And my therapist is a very good therapist, and he says that the only way out of a major depressive episode is to do stuff. And I go, well, I don't want to do stuff. I want to lie in bed. Um, and he says, well, you have to force yourself to do stuff, and once you distract yourself, the more and more you do it, your depression will go away. It's not like I don't believe him. It's that I have to force myself to get out of bed and do stuff. And that's a lot more difficult than you might think. I'm sure some people can relate to that. You know, some people with really severe depression. Um, but unfortunately, that is the only treatment in terms of psychotherapy. So I'm trying to do it now. Um, I wonder if I have it up here. So this is my healthy activities log um, as of Tuesday. So I'm trying to do these things, and I think it's made a slight dent. If my depression was a 10 going into this, I think it's now an 8.5. Um, so, I mean, I'm not saying my therapist isn't right. He probably is. And I am on the road to maybe getting out of this. I still think I need medication changes made to fully get out of this with the psychotherapy, but we'll see what happens. Um, but my experience with, I told you about my experience with borderline. My experience with depression is that it percolates. It kind of takes over you. It makes you kind of stagnant. Um, it makes you hopeless. It makes you not want to be here. Um, it kind of just drains the life out of you. If anyone can relate to that, and the same thing for borderline can be said as well. So again, you know, these disorders are very difficult to take apart. But this is one of the most common disorders that is diagnosed as comorbid with borderline. So because there's a lot of overlapping symptoms, and there are some differences that can be observed between the two. And if those differences are observed, then you can diagnose both disorders at the same time. So that's it. I think that's my experience. Not sure if I'm going to post another video, but this is just my general overall experience with these medications. All right. Thanks, guys. Happy holidays.